The UN-brokered peace talks aimed at finding a political solution to the Syrian crisis are inching forward in Geneva despite lingering differences among the sides taking part in the discussions. UN Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura is scheduled to meet with Syrian government and opposition representatives ahead of the main round of intra-Syrian negotiations. The talks began on Friday, and the Saudi-backed opposition group known as the High Negotiations Committee later joined the negotiations. The group had initially demanded that its preconditions, including a halt to the airstrikes, be met. But the UN has rejected any preconditions. The Syrian government delegation has also rejected the demands, questioning the seriousness of the opposition to resolve the crisis. Meanwhile, the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister is also expected in Geneva. Gennady Gatilov will discuss the progress in the talks with Mistura and the U.S. delegation.
Days after the launch of the third round of Syria peace talks aimed at ending the years-long conflict in the Arab country, the main round of negotiations are yet to kick off. Angered by the procrastination, head of Syrian government delegation Bashar Jafari has cast serious doubts on the seriousness of opposition groups.
The invitation from Mistura said the conference would begin on the 25th. Now we are on the 31st. The conference did not start on time because the opposition delegation was late. This is a sign that they're not serious.
Jafari also denounced preconditions set by the Saudi-backed opposition, the so-called High Negotiations Committee. The HNC is demanding the release of some prisoners and calling for an end to airstrikes and sieges. If these conditions are not met, the opposition members say they won't join the talks in Geneva. Such demands were echoed and supported by the group's main backers, Saudi Arabia and Turkey.
There would be a transfer of power away from Bashar al-Assad, and that there would be a new constitution and new elections and a new Syria in which Bashar al-Assad has no role to play. That's what the Syrian opposition went to negotiate for. We support their decision. We support them if they choose not to negotiate, and we support them if they choose to negotiate.
We asked the opposition to go to Geneva, and we asked them that they can put their conditions to start the negotiations or to continue the negotiations. They can leave any time if they are not implemented.
But what really overshadowed Sunday's talks was the bloodshed in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Bombings claimed by Daesh terrorists killed scores of people near the Sayyida Zainab shrine in Damascus countryside. Syrian government delegation condemned the terror attacks, noting they confirmed the link between a Saudi-backed opposition and terrorists.
What is regrettable is not only the explosion, but the declarations of one of the Southern Front leaders on the ground. This confirms that the Syrian government has said over and over again that there is a link between terrorism and those who sponsor terrorism from one side and some political groups that pretend to be against terrorism.
Apart from the role of President Bashar al-Assad in Syria's future, identification of terrorist groups has been a serious bone of contention among key players in previous rounds of talks.
In the past peace talks, one of the Syrian government's demands was to try to determine which groups are terrorists inside Syria, and that the question of terrorism in Syria should be included in a solution. And it's only now in 2016 has the US and its allies finally agreed and admitted that there needs to be a solution formulated for the terrorist problem as well.
However, President Assad's fate and the identification of terrorist organizations seem largely intertwined, as branding certain militant groups as terrorists would undermine efforts by the US and its regional allies, including Saudi Arabia, to ensure that Assad is removed from power. A matter which Syria and its allies Iran and Russia insist can only be decided by the people of Syria, who have paid a price for the conflict that has been ravaging their country since 2011.